WACH, South Carolina.
Battleground, South Carolina. The former president versus the former governor.
What happened to her husband? Where is he? He's gone.
He mocked my husband's military service. Donald, if you have something to say, don't say it behind my back. Get on a debate stage and say it to my face.
The decision in the hands of the people at the ballot box in a state with a history of picking presidents.
I know a lot of people don't like his behavior sometimes, but what he did for the country, I thought was all good stuff.
I feel that she was an awesome governor, and she would make an awesome president.
The odds are stacked squarely against Nikki Haley. Losses in the first two primaries in this country, a deep deficit in the polls behind Donald Trump, plus former and current rivals and colleagues saying it's game over.
As far as I'm concerned, the primary's over.
Nikki Haley is not the right candidate to be president of the United States.
We're going to keep on going. So you get out and vote. I'll continue to make you proud.
By this time Saturday night, the polls will be closed and we'll be another step closer to finding out who will face President Joe Biden in November.
We're stronger, richer, safer, and more confident than ever. When I was sitting behind that beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
Biden is worried about us. He's not worried about Donald Trump.
Well, good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us for this special preview looking ahead to Saturday's first in the South Republican primary. Of course, South Carolina, the epicenter of the political world right now. And in 2 days, we're going to find out how it all shakes out. Thank you for joining us for this special digital edition of this political look ahead. And who better to join us to break so many things down than our friend Dave Wilson, who you see quite often here on Watch Fox, and our old friend, Joel Lurie, the former senator from Richland County, and I can't leave this out because this is now your claim to fame, the co-host of Bourbon in the Back Room with another former senator.
Where's the bourbon?
That was the one thing that wasn't in the budget.
Dang it.
I'll take care of that next time.
There we go.
Brian, great to be with you. Great to be here with my old friend Dave, too. Yeah.
It's good to have both you guys in here again. It's been a while since we had both of you in here at the same time. Let's just begin here. 2 days out. Let's just look at the hype factor of this particular primary, the GOP primary, compared to what we had 3 weeks ago. Very low voter turnout. Of course, we're not going to know what the total number is for a couple more days, but what is the buzz to you, to either of you gentlemen?
I think the Republicans right now are guesstimating somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million South Carolina voters are going to show up for this election. Yeah, it's going to be significantly different than what we saw on the Democratic side.
Sure.
When you had basically a couple, not even also-rans who were there running against Joe Biden. You've got a real contest here between Donald Trump and former Governor Nikki Haley, and I think that that's going to be enough to really start to turn some people out. Plus, we're a little bit more of a Republican-heavy state, and they're trying to make a bigger statement right now.
Yeah. And even, we weren't even required to have a Democratic primary. Really, we have a sitting president.
No, and you got to go back on the Democratic side, guys, to look at 2020. And you remember President Biden had lost a couple of early states, comes here, puts together an incredible team. Congressman Clyburn endorses him. And we had, I think at that time, a record turnout. Clearly, a couple weeks ago, there wasn't a lot of interest in the primary. A lot of people didn't even know about it. And I know we're going to talk about this, but I know, gentlemen, a lot of people who normally vote in Democratic primaries that didn't vote. And you know why they didn't vote, Dave?
Why is that, Joel?
Because they wanted to vote against Donald Trump this Saturday. They wanted to vote for Nikki, and they're not
There's a
necessarily
push
big
for
Nikki
that.
Haley
I mean,
guys.
the ad started rolling out this week. There was a
Yeah.
rally at the State House encouraging people, if you didn't vote, you still can.
Right.
There's no law saying you
There are
can't.
text messages going out. There are mailers going out.
I had two on my way over here this afternoon.
Yeah.
I get about
know
10
you
a
were-
day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that's the part about this that you begin to realize there's 3.3 million registered voters in South Carolina. So we don't have registration by party.
Nope.
So it's a wide open. So if you did not vote, if you're watching right now and you did not vote in the Democratic primary earlier this month, you can still vote. That means we've got almost 3.2 million people.
Are you doing
Nikki Democrats?
Are you doing Nikki Haley's work for here?
I want to let
He's
everybody-
campaigning.
It is so important that people exercise their democratically given right
I can't
to
argue
vote.
with that.
Brian,
We can always
We're
vote.
protecting democracy, Joel.
In all seriousness, though, I have been amazed, and I know before we cut out at the end of this session, you're going to read our predictions.
I am. I got them right here. They've
Yep.
been certified.
You actually
by-
wrote them down.
Yep.
By
But I have
CPA.
been amazed at the number of people, particularly women, who normally don't vote in primaries or vote in Democratic primaries, that have said to me, and this is all anecdotally. I don't know what it all stacks up to. I still think Dave and I both agree that Trump's going to win pretty big here. But it will be really, South Carolina is a relatively small state. It's not an expensive state to buy media in. So this is really an interesting test case, as in a state that doesn't require you to register by party, can you bring out independents and Democrats against a polarizing figure like Trump? And what does that look like in the WACH? That, to me, is going to be the real fascinating story Saturday night.
That's a thing that we're going to be able to look back anecdotally later to look at, okay, let's find people who have previously voted primarily in Democratic primaries. How many of those actually showed up? Because that's going to be the place where we see whether or not Haley's attempt to bring in other voters to a Republican primary pays off or not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in a second. I want to take a look too. Our friendly Claire Vaux. See, that's friendly Claire.
Yep.
Friendly. Yeah, see, friendly. As some people call him. Joel was asking about him. Well, you're about to see him. He's looking at this race here, breaking it down a little bit, putting together some of the moments from a lot of the rallies that have been happening here across South Carolina. Here it is.
Brian, once again, the race to the White House goes through South Carolina. Right now, former President Donald Trump and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley are battling it out, hoping to clinch the GOP nomination. Current polls show that it's highly likely that Haley won't win the primary, but as she said earlier this week, she's not letting that stop her.
I feel no need to kiss the ring.
Nikki Haley making it plain that she's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with her former boss. Haley's been crisscrossing the Palmetto State for the past few weeks, touting what she did as a two-term governor.
We were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo. 5 international tire companies. They were referring to us as the beast of the Southeast.
A recent USA Today poll finds that among those very likely to vote Saturday, Trump leads the former governor by about 63 to 35%. During one of her campaign stops, Haley pointing to the fact that polls are not always accurate.
We started with 2% in Iowa. We ended up with 20%. We went to New Hampshire. They said we were 30 points down on the polls. We got 43%.
While speaking to voters in South Carolina, Haley saying Trump didn't finish the job when it comes to the nation's debt.
In the 4 years he was given, he put us $8 trillion in debt that our kids now have to figure out how they're going to pull out of.
Haley continues by saying Trump is putting the country more in danger after meddling with Congress and the border issue.
Donald Trump had no business telling them not to vote for anything on the border until the election. That puts every American's national security at risk. It takes one person for a 9/11 moment. It is not about what he wants.
She's also taking aim at President Biden.
I think the Democrats know that he's not their nominee. I think they're all trying to figure out what to do now.
Haley says despite what happens in the primary, her focus is clear.
South Carolina, it's closing that gap. Then we'll head straight to Michigan, which is 3 days later, and then we're headed to Super Tuesday. These are dangerous times. The most important thing we can do is regain our focus and shared sense of purpose.
According to Fox News, a recent campaign report first obtained by Politico showed more than 5,000 donors who gave to Biden's 2020 campaign have donated to Haley this election cycle. Brian?
All right. In that roughly 2-minute piece,
Right.
It's time for batting practice for you two gentlemen, because they were set up there. There's a lot of ground covered there. I saw you taking notes. I think where do we begin?
Right-handed and you write left-handed. Is that a statement about us?
I think it is.
May have something to do with our political views.
Maybe. It may be.
Where do
I'm
we
right
begin
with both hands
when we
on
look
it.
at that and many of the things that were just said?
I think an interesting thing that we had as a discussion before we got kicked off is the fact of what's going to end up happening as we get closer to the conventions. You know, the Republicans are going to be in Milwaukee. There's this question of what's going to happen. Is Nikki Haley trying to position herself right now to be like the backup quarterback on the sideline, standing by the coach,
holding the clipboard,
waiting? I'm waiting for that moment for Donald Trump to trip, fall, and
But Dave, would she be that person? And we had this discussion over lunch. I mean, here's what I don't understand. you know, and far be it from me to understand Republican primary politics, right?
It's its own beast, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But clearly, today's Republican Party in South Carolina, you know, a large majority of them still identify with what I'm going to call MAGA, Make America Great, Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I mean, if I'm Joe Biden, I'm taking all these clips that Nikki Haley's running and I'm just going to rerun them in November, right? You know, assuming Biden's the nominee, which who knows, you know, where that goes. We can talk about that. But is she the backup plan? If Trump eats a Big Mac and has a heart attack, is she the backup plan?
Well, that's the thing. One of the questions you've got to start asking is, what's the game that she's trying to play here? Because it takes 1,215 delegates to become the nominee for the Republican Party. That's the way our delegate math works. When you look at it right now, Super Tuesday's total number of available delegates is 1,215 by the time you finish Super Tuesday, which means that 24 states will have voted by that point in time. And I think that's the argument, that's the way that Nikki Haley's trying to spin this right now, is wait a minute, we haven't had enough people voting yet to be able to say what may or may not be the case, but the reality is she loses in South Carolina. Even if she loses by 1 point,
yes,
Donald Trump gets all 50
of them.
delegates.
Because we're a winner take all.
We're a winner take all.
Most of the Super Tuesday states are winner take all.
Right. There's three basic styles. There's winner take all. There's proportional, which basically means, okay, if you got 30% and you got 30% and I got 40%, then I take 40%
you get some piece
of the
of the pie.
delegates. Right. Yeah. But when you look at it from that standpoint, the other one is this hybrid thing, and very few states still use that. But when you think about it, Nikki Haley you're wondering, is she just trying to play some delegate math here, hoping that maybe when they get to Milwaukee, there'll be this call against Trump? It's really hard to tell right now.
I don't see it. I mean, I have tried to figure out, and you got to remember, I mean, my relationship goes back to her, to when she was first elected to the House. She beat a longtime incumbent, what was his name? Larry Coon from Lexington.
For Lexington County, had been in the legislature for 40 years.
Yep, beat a long time. And she went door to door. She had a very appealing, genuine nature about her. And so we've all known her a long time, but I can't quite figure out what her end game is. I'm enjoying it. As someone who just loves politics and particularly loves to see Republicans attack each other, I'm enjoying it, but I don't know what the end game here is. And
That's the question.
you know, I mean, I would even tell you, Dave, here's a question I would ask you. Senator Scott has said he's not going to run again. He may or may not be Trump's vice presidential pick. But is Nikki Haley doing herself a disservice amongst South Carolina Republicans by attacking Trump so bad that she could not win that seat if she decides to run for Senator Scott's seat?
It's a really interesting question, and you know this from having served with her in the legislature. I've always said you can get more done, you know, at breakfast at the mansion than you can ever do with a pair of pigs or a set of stilettos. Because remember, Mark Sanford came up with a set of pigs.
I was standing right next to him. Yeah.
And then you had Nikki Haley who says, I've got a pair of stilettos and I know how to use them. The relationship building that happens when you're in public office, and you understand this, plays itself out and pays off dividends down the road.
To your point, there are, 120 plus or minus Republican legislators at the State House?
Right.
I know of I know of 2 or 3 that have endorsed her.
Right.
The rest have gone to Donald Trump. Now remember, you talk about relationship building. Her first year as governor, and I did an interview on NPR the other day, I told this story. Her first year as governor, she gave out report cards. You're looking at the guy that I got one of the few Fs.
I remember how you did. You think you got an F?
You know what my mother said? She goes, it's not the first F you've ever got, but it's the first one I'm proud of you for. So.
But if you look at it,
right.
She's right. She is paying back the dividends that she's getting right now politically in the state are based upon the investments that she made as governor. You've got 3 people, maybe 4, who have backed her. Every constitutional officer who is at least endorsed is endorsing Donald Trump.
Sure.
People who were with DeSantis have endorsed Donald Trump. You had a whole rally in 3 or 4 cities across the state of legislators standing up for Donald Trump.
Team Trump.
And even Nancy Mace. I know you love to talk about Nancy on the show.
We have an episode called The Race to Replace Nancy Mace.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
You like these rhymes and alliteration?
Yeah, I'm into it. Yeah.
But the thing about it is...
Now that I'm a journalist.
Now that you're welcome. I wasn't recovering.
Welcome to the family.
Yeah, there you go. But she, even with Nancy Mace, who was endorsed by Haley.
Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley saved her campaign.
She did, because it was because Trump had endorsed Katie Arrington, and then Nikki Haley comes out for Nancy Mace. But Nancy's turned her back on Nikki. Tim Scott's turned her back on Nikki, because remember, Tim Scott became U.S. Senator when Jim DeMint stepped down.
There wouldn't be a U.S. Senator, Tim Scott, but for Nikki.
Not be. Exactly.
Dave, I have a question.
Okay.
And she brought this up.
Yeah.
Are these Republican legislators endorsing Donald Trump out of fear or out of passion?
Or out of hope for a job?
Or out of
I would not necessarily call it fear as much as I would call it flowing with the crowd. I mean, I just, if you want an honest answer, folks,
don't swim against the current, right?
But
you know, Ryan, can you let him redo that?
The current is going in a particular direction, and everybody else tends to follow along.
Okay, fair enough.
But I think that you're seeing that right now, because people are like, okay, well, if he is the president, do I want him on my bad side?
I know.
But that goes.
He scares the heck out of people.
Well, he does.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where you have people like Tim Scott right here, who's turning around and had been very harsh about him sometimes on the campaign trail, very much so proselytizing for Donald Trump now. I mean, he definitely drops into the faithy vibrato when he's up there talking about him. So
you know what's interesting, Brian?
Yeah.
Takes me back to a Queen classic.
Wait a minute.
Oh, we're going into music now. Here we go.
Okay.
A crazy little thing called love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Trump and Haley have had this love-hate relationship that dates back 8 years ago.
Absolutely, they do.
Remember, Dave?
Yeah.
He first ran for president. She came out very much in opposition. She came out, I think she endorsed Senator Rubio from Florida.
She did.
Ultimately.
I remember at the event in Lexington County.
These two have this love-hate relationship, and what's fascinating, and we talk about this all the time on our podcasts, is, and you mentioned this in our opening, Brian, we're seeing that relationship play out right before our very own eyes in our very own state, right here, and it all kind of comes to head this Saturday, and that's just fascinating to me.
Now, there's something I know Dave has been chomping at the bit to talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
On its surface, it looked like a giant piece of red meat to maybe get people to rally around Nikki Haley. Right. When Trump, a little more than a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, asked, where's her husband? Where's her husband? Well, we all know where he is. He's deployed on the other side of the world with the military. This week, she responded yet again to the claim, and we got a little piece of sound here from that day in Greenville on, I believe it was Tuesday afternoon.
Let's take a look.
I wish Michael was here today, and I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't. He's serving on the other side of the world, where conflict is the norm, where terrorists hide among the innocent, where Iran's terrorist proxies are now attacking American troops.
There it is.
So
that was what we were waiting for.
This is the place where I'm.
Dave's going to break this down like a coach breaking down game film.
This is like game film, folks.
Yeah.
So when you look at this, okay, Nikki Haley makes an announcement that she's going to have what's called the State of the Campaign.
The State of the Campaign. Mm-hmm.
So half the people in media world were freaking out, going, "Oh my gosh, she's going to drop out of the race in South Carolina, in her own home state." No. If you go back and look, there were only 50 people in the crowd. 5 rows, 10 chairs, 50 people sitting right there, but there were cameras galore. And when you look at that, there were at least, listening to it, there were at least 3 different television commercials that I will guarantee you will come out of that. Not the least of which was the comments that she made about Michael. Now, I'm not saying that she's not missing Michael and the kids aren't missing Michael. That's a reality. Military families, when their loved ones go on deployment, it is a very, very difficult time. But at the same time, when Donald Trump decides to ask the question, where's her husband? Where's her husband? She's going to respond that way. I can guarantee you that that's going to be a television commercial that either starts airing during these last days of the election here in South Carolina, or they're going to start airing in the early
or in Michigan,
Michigan and the Super Tuesday states that are going to be coming from that, because she has got to make her argument against Donald Trump. Now, she kind of stayed quiet during the debates, but now she is full-throated. Welcome to the world of what we constantly know as the blood sport of South Carolina politics.
We're there.
All right, so Brian, first of all, Dave, I'm so disappointed that you don't have just confidence in people's genuineness anymore. You think that was political show?
If it weren't for the fact that it looked like a house of cards set from the background.
All right, I want to take you guys back, though. Here's
Yes.
what's interesting, and we haven't seen it. I almost thought it was going to play out here, but I think Trump's too far ahead. Let's go back to 2014. 2014, at that time, Representative Nikki Haley was not having a good week in her campaign. And on a Thursday afternoon, a senator from her own county, Jakey Knotts, goes on a Facebook Live event, makes some very derogatory racial comments about her, takes the oxygen out of the room. She becomes a martyr, a victim, and starts to surge. I almost thought Trump handed that to her about 10 days ago.
It looked that way.
I mean, I thought, now, I don't know why she didn't say, where's Melania? Where's Melania, right? You know, you don't see her on the campaign trail.
No.
But it does feel like that. I think the Haley campaign has run some great ads. I just think the distance between them has been so wide that it's almost impossible to catch it. We will find out in a
So
few
that
days.
you don't think that'll ding him at all with this military state?
A little bit.
It depends. It depends on where they use it and how they use it. But if you look at the totality of the press conference, which is really what it was, a press conference speech, it was the makings of a set of television commercials that will probably end up airing in the Super Tuesday states, because you can't get to 21 states in 10 days the way you need to unless you're going on the air, which that then begs the real question is, why is she still in this? She's still in this right now, Joel, I think, because there's still people who are putting money into it. The reason she is still moving forward right now is that there's gas in the tank.
She likes to be relevant. Let's face it. She had a unique opportunity after the first two debates. She had some momentum. And I don't know quite why, guys, she couldn't capitalize on that. Maybe she was threading the needle a little too close in Iowa, and she could have just come out swinging against Trump like she's doing now.
Right.
She tried to thread the needle. She likes to be relevant. What her long-term play is, I'm not sure anyone knows, including, I'm not sure she knows at this point. But you're right,
Yeah.
She's got a lot of money. She's got a lot of, the Koch brothers are behind her.
Right.
You know, they do not want another Trump,
They don't want
4
Trump
years
at all.
of Trump.
Right.
So it's just fascinating to me to see. And then, believe me, we are not without problems on the Democratic side, okay? I mean, I keep reading articles and thinking maybe this could happen. Love Joe Biden, love everything he's done for our country. I think he rescued the country in 2020. But I also think that when you look at the way people think about him, there's a lot of concern about his age.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not saying anything that hadn't been out there 100 times. So do we go to Chicago and have a floor fight? Do we just have a free-for-all at the convention? Does Joe Biden maybe pick up the phone and Obama's in one hand and Clinton's in the other and saying, Joe, you did great in 2020, it's time. Do we have this floor fight? Wouldn't that be fascinating?
That would be the end-all, be-all kind of great political moment of this entire campaign.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be great, because I think you could do it on both sides. The last time I know in my lifetime this happened was back in 1976. You had Ford, who had come off of the Nixon era. He had never been elected as president or vice president.
Right.
So he is running. You had Ronald Reagan, a popular media figure, also had been governor of California. It comes to a floor fight. The floor votes keep going back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, Ford wins it. But when it was all said and done and Ford had given his speech, he calls Ronald Reagan back down. And Reagan gives this phenomenal speech. And it really set the groundwork for him to the known candidate of 1980.
Let me take you, all right, in 1980. So I'm going to tell you a story I bet you didn't know. I was a senior in high school, and my brothers and I went to New York for the Democratic convention, only convention I've ever been to, because I'm really not into national politics. You know, it's just not my
You're a great local guy.
Thank you very much.
Where the rubber meets the road, local politics.
So my dad was leading a group of people. Carter beat Ford in '76. I was telling a friend of mine over lunch, in 1980, Carter very weak in the polls. You know, inflation is high, gas prices are high. My dad is trying to lead an effort to nominate who? Ted Kennedy. And Kennedy then makes the speech to try to bring the party back together.
Right.
Of course, 1980, Reagan won in a landslide, and I guess, my dad was a visionary in so many ways, and he was right.
Right.
So it's interesting. Wouldn't you love to see that play out this year?
Right, because I think
Chaos.
that
Chaos.
it would
That's what
make
you're
for
pushing
it would
for.
make for a great 2024 wrap up of the political season, because it's been honestly, and Nikki Haley made this point the other day. She said, "I'm not backing out of the race because we've got to give people a choice." Because
Yeah, you can say
honestly, I
that.
don't think any of us want to have night after night after night of a general election fight between Donald Trump and Joe Biden that's going to start in March and not finish until November.
Dave, what
We
does
saw
that
this
say?
TV show before.
Yeah, well, she,
Yeah.
I mean, I give Haley's people have run some great ads here, and it's been fun living in this state and telling my friends and family around the country the grumpy old men ad. I mean, I thought it was a great ad. I thought just talking about two grumpy old men, I think there's a bigger statement here. And I know that you want me and Dave to be very partisan in our comments, and we're doing our best.
I want you to be honest.
But I think there's a bigger statement in it. I think the statement here is you're seeing a complete failure of the two-party system. I think the fact that of a country of 400 to 500 million people, and the best we can do is Donald Trump on the right as a Republican, Joe Biden on the left or as the Democrat, to me speaks volumes about how our two-party system is failing this country right now. And we've talked about this on the podcast. It's really very regrettable to me that we face this time in history.
I think the other part of it is, I was in Washington, D.C. the other week, and I'm speaking with some reporters while I was up there, and I began to realize that a generational shift is getting ready to happen politically. If you take a look at it right now, the leadership in Washington, D.C., the average age of leadership is more than 75. If you take a look at what Nikki Haley's trying to say, I mean, her comment on CBS this morning was, we're having to force a decision between two 80-year-old white men. I mean, that's who else but Nikki Haley can make that kind of comment, for one. But I think over the next 4 to 6 to 8 years, we're finally going to see that next generation of leadership start to rise up. Nikki Haley's only 52 years old.
Yeah, she is. 30
And
years younger than our
That
other
is
candidates.
significant in, as you know, Joel, in the lifespan of somebody politically. And as long as she has money continuing to flow in from somewhere, I think Nikki Haley's going to try to keep and maintain that relevance that you were talking about a minute
And
ago.
I'll be interested to see if she can. 52, she might be just getting started. That's about the age that I got out.
And you got smart and got out, and now you're doing even better.
Thank you.
With 3 different careers now.
I love it, man.
You wrote down your results. Both of you did, and of course they were certified by an accountant to make sure they're correct here, just like we do at the office.
You have some other deal.
We got about
McConchie and Associates.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, the numbers wouldn't be too good if I was doing the math, I can assure you. All right. We don't have a crystal ball, but we looked into one.
Right.
These are Joel's numbers.
Are those Joel's numbers?
Those are Dave's numbers.
Oh, these
those are
Dave's?
mine.
Oh, you
Yeah.
signed them.
Yeah.
I signed
Dave's,
mine.
okay, yeah,
I
Joel
can at
didn't
least
sign it.
recognize
That's
my-
right.
my-
DW.
Yeah.
So here's
Yeah.
where we go.
Yeah.
Here's where we go. You have Donald Trump at 62%, Nikki Haley 38% on
Yeah.
Saturday.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to Joel's.
Where are you going?
Trump 58, Haley 42.
All right, let me justify that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We got about 2 minutes.
I'm
so
going
you-
to see which one of us is closer on
we
the
got about 2
All right,
minutes
all right,
left.
I think, listen, in any election, 58 to 42 is a landslide. So, she
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
come out and say, we got 42% of the vote like she did in, where was it, New Hampshire?
It was in New
She
Hampshire.
still got beat pretty bad, right?
It was lopsided.
But I do think, Brian, I'm really fascinated, and it's all anecdotal, and it's all does suburban South Carolina, Charleston, Spartanburg, Greenville, Columbia, Rock Hill, do these areas, independents, respond to this campaign? And that's why I think she keeps Trump under 60. I could be completely wrong. I'm not even going to say it's wishful thinking because I'm not voting, okay? But I just think it's just my gut. But I could be wrong.
Well, and that's
You get the last word,
It's
that
the
means-
question. It's the question that the best answers you find are the ones that you find when you're standing in line at the grocery store, when you're sitting at a restaurant and you're talking to people. And I think Joel's got a point. I think Nikki Haley has an ability to start swaying some other people over. The question is this: is it enough of an enthusiasm to get them to actually get out on Saturday?
It's going to be a nice day.
That
no
always
excuses
helps.
not to. You don't need the umbrella, I don't think. We're going to find out.
It'll be
Gentlemen,
fun.
it is always such a pleasure to have both of you.
Thanks
We
so
could do
much.
this. We could probably have this discussion until the polls close on Saturday if we really wanted to. But
A lot of fun.
You
Thank
got
you
a
for
lot of
having us.
information in here, folks. You got a lot to digest. If you haven't made your mind up yet, you got some time to sleep on it here over the next couple of days. Polls open again on Saturday. Early voting period is now closed. Again, thank you for watching this preview of the South Carolina First in the South GOP primary. And remember, exercise that right to vote on Saturday.